better watch out if your enemy's a road ahead of full prophecy to be the greatest beast the world has ever seen. I feed him every day like the bones clean. I feed him all the hate and he grows me, and he gets claws real big, pissed off quick. And if you cross him, you might drop dead. Metaphorically, of course, settling this war, never getting bored, loves the blood and gore, always wanting more, feed him from the source. They don't really understand until they feel the force departed. If you start shit, you'll be heartless in the darkness, torn apart quick, you left scars ripped, you'll be chewed up and discarded.
What's up my good tenno? We are back again for some warframe tutorial. Today we are going to talk about the tankiest frame in the game, Revenant or Revenant Prime. This warframe offers crowd control, healing and even an armor skill that makes you invulnerable to all status effects and negates all incoming damage while stunning the enemy that hits you. He has almost all the essentials to cheese steelpath contents. You can go for hours and still have been breezing through waves of enemies. In today's video we will talk about how we can build this badass warframe into a monster that can easily do steelpath. But first let's talk about how his kit works and how his skill synergizes with each other. His first ability, Enthrall. Revenant gains control over the enemies, making them his allies. Enthralled enemies will attack other enemies and also spread Enthrall to them, making a horde of enthralled enemies with the maximum number of 7. With this ability, Revenant can avoid aggro from enemies because enthralled units will function like the shadows of Necros, getting the aggro of other enemies away from Revenant. If this isn't enough for Revenant's survivability, his second ability, Mesmer Skin, grants Revenant status invulnerability, 100% damage mitigation and even another layer of crowd control. This is due to the fact that all enemies that attack Revenant while Mesmer Skin is active will be stunned for a few seconds. This skill does not act like an overguard or shield. This skill is dependent on the number of hits you get rather than the damage you get per hit. This is because when Mesmer skill is active, Revenant will be granted a number of instances of Mesmer skill. Each Mesmer skin is equal to 1 hit, to put it simply. If you have 15 instances of Mesmer skin, Revenant can get hit 15 times without getting any status effect or even damaged. Revenant's third ability, Reave, makes Revenant to act like a gas wave, stealing shields and health from enemies that were hit by it. Enthralled enemies that were hit by Reave will get any status effect that is currently affecting Revenant. This ability will restore 1 instance of Mesmer skin per enthralled enemies hit by the Reave. With enough power strength, this skill can also one-hit enthralled enemies even in high-level missions. Revenant's fourth ability, Danse Macabre, erupt with a multitude of Eidolon energy beams and sweep a circle of death around Revenant. The beams will modify their damage type to target select defenses, while incoming damage is redirected back into the beams. Hold fire to boost status effects and damage, at the cost of increased energy consumption. Thralls killed by this leave overshield pickups. This ability is where we mostly put our subsume ability because this does deal enough damage when it comes to higher tier enemies. The subsume skill that we will use is called Roar, a buff skill from Rhino which gives us multiplicative damage boost. This skill is different from Eclipse because this buff multiplies our final damage while Eclipse will multiply our weapons base damage. Now that we are done explaining Revenant's skills, let's move on to the builds. For our primary we will use Phantasma. You can use the Phantasma Prime if you have it. We will use this weapons because of the high status chance, fire rate and fast reload speed. For our secondary weapons we will use the laetum with the evolution of overwhelming attrition. We use this so we can use critical mods such as Prime Target Cracker and Prime Pistol Gambit. And for the melee weapon, we will use the dual sword Nikana Sun and Moon. This weapons can be acquired once you've done the Duvi Re Paradox quest. Now let's look at Revenant's build. Enemy radar for the aura mod, you can swap this with growing power for more power strength. Power drift, Umbra intensify and blind rage for the power strength. This will put our strength to 250% plus the 60% additional flat power strength we get from Molt augmented after we max the stacks, which will put our strength to 310%. With this, we can have 18 stacks of Mesmer skin. Now you may ask why I didn't solely focus on power strength by putting transient fortitude? Well, that's because I still want to be able to utilize Revenant's other skills and I want to have my Roar and Enthrall to have a pretty good duration. That is why I also used Primed Continuity and Augur Message. Primed Flow for more energy capacity and Rolling Guard to give us 3 seconds of invulnerability and status cleanse whenever we have to cast our Mesmer skin again. Natural Talent for the casting speed. For the arcanes we use Molt Augmented and Arcane Energize. This is an all-around build where you can utilize Revenant's other skills and not rely on solely his second ability by maxing out his power strength. For the Phantasma build, We used galvanized savvy for the gun CO and status chance. Galvanized chamber and vigilante armaments for the multi-shot. Chilling reload and toxic barrage for us to create viral. We didn't maxed out the chilling reload because we want our heat proc to be the priority. Incendiary coat for the heat damage and prop. We want heat proc because heat damage from its status effects ramps up as a whole. Unlike bleeds where each bleed has a separate damage and instance. Heat will keep the initial heat proc ramping the damage and expiring as a whole. So that being said, every time we proc heat, the timer will keep resetting, and because we are using the phantasma, a beam weapon that can proc a lot of status effects in a short period of time, we can achieve huge damage from heat status alone. Shotgun barrage for the fire rate increase and ammo mutation mod because we consume ammo like crazy when using this gun. Galvanized acceleration for the projectile length, which is a huge DPS because we can reach more enemies, and since this gun has infinite punch through when hitting bodies, we can hit a lot of enemies more. Another great thing when using Phantasma on Revenant is the maximum magazine of Phantasma will go from 11 to 15 ammo per magazine. For our secondary or laetum build, since we are using overwhelming attrition, we can use critical mods such as the Primed Target Cracker and Primed Pistol Gambit, which boost our critical chance and critical damage. Gunslinger for fire rate because laetum on its incarnate mode is a little underwhelming when it comes to fire rate. Galvanized diffusion and shot for the gun CO and multi-shot. We mod this for corrosive and heat. Heat being the priority prop steady hands for the Exilus mod, but you can change this for the mod that gives you projectile speed. Secondary dexterity because we will mainly use our melee weapon for clearing waves of enemies and will only use this gun for killing acolytes. For our melee weapon or for the sun and moon, we mod it for critical and slash build. We use condition overload for our base damage multiplier because our primary and secondary weapon deals different kinds of status effects, which is beneficial for our condition overload mod. Sacrificial steel and blood rush for the critical chance, this will enable us to hit orange crits every time. Organ shatter for the critical damage, primed reach because we want to hit more enemies per slash to build up combo quickly. Weeping wounds for status chance increase depending on our combo counter. Berserker fury for the attack speed since faster attack speed equals to more damage per second. And finally, the last mod, we used primed smite grinder for the multiplicative faction damage. This will be added to our damage buff given by Roar. This damage buff transfers to our damage made by our status effects such as bleed. This is great because with these damage boosts we can clear up hordes of enemies quickly. And now as to how we play Revenant with this build. The first thing you should do is cast your mesmer skin. You should utilize your first skill to enthrall enemies, which will take enemy aggro away from you. Then for facing against acolytes, you can just use your first ability to enthrall acolytes, preventing them from targeting you. Plus they will take enemy aggro away from you, which makes facing them a win-win because you can either use them as a meat shield or you can use Enthrall to make sure that the acolyte won't hit you. And that concludes our video for today. Click like and subscribe to the channel if you like these kinds of content. I hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck tenno and thank you for watching.